Welcome to your Get That Nugget for GCSE English Literature. Today we're going to be concentrating on giving you a framework in order to structure your paragraphs for writing the Shakespeare essays. This session is to complement your lessons with your teachers and not to replace them in any way. So today we're going to be focusing on the character of Juliet. We are going to unpick some key quotations for her using a specific framework that will support you in writing paragraphs. So Juliet as a character is introduced to us early on in the play as someone who is young and naive, someone who is innocent, and someone who at this stage is still essentially owned by her father. Before we actually meet her, we hear a conversation between Lord Capulet and Paris discussing his marriage to Juliet. So Lord Capulet says, "My child is yet a stranger in the world." So the first thing we're going to look at is AO1, which is about your response to the text and the question and your use of quotations. So already we have the quotation. That quotation tells us that Juliet is young, innocent, and not worldly wise. The next thing we have to look at is how Shakespeare gets that message across to us. So straight away, you have the use of the possessive pronoun my. We have the noun child and the noun stranger. So the possessive pronoun shows ownership. Child suggests youth and someone to be protected. And then stranger suggests a lack of knowledge. We then look at this from the point of AO3 and we can link that to the idea that Elizabethan women would be married young, but would also be the property of their fathers and then their husbands. Okay, so we've looked at that quotation. We've looked at it in terms of AO1, your response to the text, AO2, the writer's techniques, and then AO3, how that relates to the time. The next quotation we're going to have a look at is this one. So following the Capulet ball, she meets Romeo, she falls in love with Romeo, and at the end of the ball she recognises that he is someone she's not allowed to love. So in terms of how this presents Juliet at this point, she is someone who is in love, she has grown up, she has changed from the start of the play. So for AO1, Juliet is beginning to grow up, take responsibility for her own feelings, and is in love. In terms of AO2, what we're going to look at is Shakespeare's use of the word only, and that qualifier shows us that Romeo is the only person she's ever loved and the only person she's supposed to hate. This suggests already that Juliet is in some sort of turmoil. The use of the word love shows us that she is already in love. She then goes on to say, too early seen, unknown. So when she first met him, she didn't know who he was, and therefore she fell in love with him at first sight. When she then goes on to say, known too late, it suggests that there is no return, there is no going back. So now that she knows he's a Capulet, she knows that she's not allowed to love him, but it is too late. AO3. Women were not allowed to choose their husbands. Okay. At this point, as much as Lord Capulet seems like a caring, loving parent, it is not up to Juliet who she marries. It is up to Lord Capulet, and he has to agree to that marriage, and that marriage for him would need to be advantageous. He would need to feel that that marriage gave him something. And then the last quotation we're going to look at is this one. Following Romeo's banishment, Juliet is being forced into a marriage to Paris. Obviously, she can't tell her father why she can't marry Paris. She doesn't want to marry Paris because she doesn't want to betray Romeo. And so she goes to the friar and asks him to solve her problem. At this point, we see Juliet being very direct. She is strong, but she is also desperate. AO2. The use of the verb die is key. She is showing that she is willing to do anything to protect her relationship with Romeo. Death is final, and therefore she's suggesting that she has nothing to live for. When we link this to AO3, it starts to have more of a meaning, because suicide would have been a mortal sin, which would have meant that she went to hell, and therefore Juliet is saying she'd rather go to hell rather than betray Romeo. Now, if you unpick your quotations like this, you essentially have a structure that enables you to write a paragraph. So if we look at this one and look at the representation of Juliet, so by the end of the play, Shakespeare shows Juliet as a strong but desperate character. When she tells the friar that she longs to die, the use of the verb shows the significance of the situation and her willingness to do anything. In Elizabethan England,
suicide was a mortal sin. This therefore shows how far Juliet is willing to go for Romeo, as she would rather go to hell than betray him.
Okay, and you can see there that you have got all of your assessment objectives covered. You have AO1, AO2, AO3, and then back to AO1 at the end. So what you can do now is, using the quotations that we have looked at, or 3 of your own, write an answer to the question, how does Shakespeare present Juliet?